Their Eyes Were Watching God, Chapter 6. Every morning, the world flung itself over and exposed the town to the sun. So Janie had another day, and every day had a store in it, except Sundays. The store itself was a pleasant place, if only she didn't have to sell things. When the people sat around on the porch and passed around the pictures of their thoughts for others to look at and see, it was nice. The fact that the thought pictures were always crayon enlargements of life made it even nicer to listen to. So let's pause here and look at the literary tools that Hurston uses in the first paragraph of Chapter 6. These include personification, diction, and metaphor. So where do you think the personification is occurring? Take a look. If you said the first sentence where it says, "Every morning, the world flung itself over and exposed the town to the sun," you are correct. In this sentence, the Earth's rotation is treated like the Earth turning over in its bed, where the Earth is a thinking and feeling thing. And not only is it thinking and feeling, but it seems rather annoyed where it's flinging itself over and exposing itself to the town. And the purpose of this is it reminds readers that there is a greater power than the people. In this sentence, it's the Earth, where it has control over whether the town people see the sun or the moon. But also remember, the title of this book is Their Eyes Were Watching God. So there's this ever-present theme of a greater power that is greater than the characters in the book. And that will come into play later on in the novel. Now we also see the diction with the use of the word flung and exposed. And we also see kind of the trudging of Janie's daily life, where the word store is repeated multiple times because it's always around, even though she doesn't want to have to deal with it. And then we also see a metaphor. So the metaphor are the crayon enlargements of life. So the people in the store are not actually passing around pictures, and they're not actually passing around pictures that have been drawn with crayons. This is a metaphor. So the metaphor of the crayon drawings is actually the townspeople detailed and exaggerated stories. So when they pass around pictures, that actually means that they're telling stories. And when Janie compares it to a crayon enlargement, that's because their stories have been exaggerated and become highly detailed, but also kind of silly, like a child's drawing. So it emphasizes the humor of their stories. So while we see these three literary devices in the opening paragraph, this is not the only place that they occur. Hurston uses these three and many other literary devices throughout the story. So keep an eye out for them because they'll give you a deeper meaning and a more complex understanding of what Hurston wants her readers to know about her themes and her symbols and her characters, which will give you more to work with in your upcoming project. But let's get back to reading. Take, for instance, the case of Matt Bonner's yellow mule. They had him up for conversation every day the Lord sent, most especially if Matt was there himself to listen. Sam and Lige and Walter were the ringleaders of the mule talkers. The others threw in whatever they could chance upon, but it seemed as if Sam and Lige and Walter could hear and see more about that mule than the whole county put together. All they needed was to see Matt's long, spare shape coming down the street, and by the time he got to the porch, they were ready for him. "Hello, Matt." "Evening, Sam." "Mighty glad you come along right now, Matt. Me and some others was just about to come and hunt ya." "What for, Sam?" "Mighty serious matter, man. Serious." "Yeah, man," Lige would cut in dolefully. "It needs your strict attention. You ought to not lose no time." "What is it, then? You ought to hurry up and tell me." "Reckon we better not tell you here at the store. It's too far off to do any good. We better walk on down by Lake Sibelia." "What's wrong, man? I ain't after none of y'all's foolishness now." That mule of yours, Matt. You better go see about him. He's bad off." "Where's 'bout? Did he wade in the lake and an alligator catch him?" "Worse than that. The women folk got your mule. When I come around the lake about noontime, my wife and some others had him flat on the ground using his sides for a washboard." The great clap of laughter that they had been holding in burst out. Sam never cracked a smile. "Yeah, Matt, that mule so skinny till the women is using his rib bones for a rub board and hanging things out on his hock bones to dry." Matt realizes that they have tricked him again, and the laughter makes him mad, and when he gets mad, he stammers. Use the stinking lie, Sam, and your feet ain't mates. You. Ah, man, 'tain't no use in you getting mad. You knows you don't feed your mule. How's he gonna get fat? I does feed him. I give him a full cup of corn every feedin'. Lige knows all about that cup of corn. He's hid around your barn and watched you. Ain't no feed cup that you measure that corn out with. It's a teacup. I does feed him. He's just too mean to get fat. He stay poor and rob Boney just to spite me. Scared he'll have to work some. So let's pause there, and I want for you to think about how does Hurston portray the conversation that's going on in the store. So think about it with the part we just read and the part we're about to read. Yeah, you feed him soft a come up and season it with rawhide. Does feed the ordinary varmint? Don't care what I do, I can't get along with him. He fights every inch in front of the plow, and even lay back his ears to kick and bite when I go into the stall to feed him. Get reconciled, Matt, Leach soothed. Us all know he's mean, and I seen him when he took off after one of them robbers' chillins in the street, and would have caught him and maybe trampled him to death if the wind hadn't changed all of a sudden. You see, the young'un was trying to make it to the fence Stark's onion patch, and the mule was dead and behind him and gaining on him every jump, when all of a sudden the wind changed and blowed the mule way off his course. Him being so poor and everything, and before the ordinary varmint could get back, the young'un had gone off over the fence. The porch laughed, and Matt got mad again. Maybe the mule takes out after everybody, Sam said, 'cause he thinks everybody here coming is Matt Bonner, coming to work him on an empty stomach. Nah. You stop that right now, Walter objected. That mule don't think I look like Matt Bonner. He ain't that dumb. If I thought he didn't know no better, I'd have my picture took and give it to the mule so he could learn better. I ain't going to low him to hold nothing like that against me. Matt struggled to say something, but his tongue failed him so. He jumped off the porch and walked away as mad as he could. But that never halted the mule talk. There would be more stories about how poor the brute was, his age, his evil disposition, and his latest capers. Everybody indulged in mule talk. He was next to the mayor in prominence, and made better talkin'. So let's return to this question of how does Hurston portray the conversations that go on at the store. So in this page and a half, the male characters are teasing Matt about his mule. So his mule is very, very thin because Matt doesn't feed it enough. And so they create these different stories that essentially make fun of how underfed Matt's mule is. So in the first story, they talk about how the women are using the mule's rib cage to wash their clothes. In the next story, the mule is chasing after a kid, but then the wind comes by and blows the mule around because he's so light, because he's skinny. And so they do these things to frustrate Matt. But what's the larger purpose of this scene? So we see a lot of teasing and good humor. The stories are funny. But this also shows the strength of the community, how they all gather around and they tease each other and they have these ongoing stories and these traditions that they keep up day to day. And Janie enjoys their company because she enjoys the stories and the good humor of it. So let's see where it goes now. And it says, Janie loved the conversation, and sometimes she thought up good stories on the mule, but Joe had forbidden her to indulge. He didn't want her talking after such trashy people. Use Miss Mayor Starks, Janie. I can't see what a woman with your stability would want to be treasuring all that gum grease from folks that don't even know the house they sleep in. 'Tain't no earthly use. These just some puny humans playing around the toes of time. So, in the upcoming page, I want you to consider how is Janie and Joni's relationship developed. So the paragraph I just read is Jody telling Janie that she can't talk to the people who she listens to in the store. Let's see what else is going on. Janie noted that while he didn't talk the mule himself, he sat and laughed at it, laughed his big heh-heh laugh. But then, when Lige or Sam or Walter or some of the other big picture talkers were using a side of the world for a canvas, Joe would hustle her off inside the store to sell something. Looked like he took pleasure in doing it. Why couldn't he go himself sometimes? She had come to hate the inside of that store anyway. The post office too. People always coming and asking for mail at the wrong time, just when she was trying to count up something or write in an account book. Get her so hackled she'd make the wrong change for stamps. Then, too, she couldn't read everybody's writing. Some folks wrote so funny and spelt things different from what she knew about. As a rule, Joe put up the mail himself, but sometimes when he was off, she had to do it herself, and it always ended up in a fuss. The store itself kept her with a sick headache. The labor of getting things down off of a shelf or out of a barrel was nothing. And so long as people wanted only a can of tomatoes or a pound of rice, it was all right. But supposing they went on and said a pound and a half of bacon and a half pound of lard, the whole thing changed from a little walking and stretching to a mathematical dilemma. Or maybe cheese was 37 cents a pound and somebody came and asked for a dime's worth. She went through many silent rebellions over things like that. Such a waste of life and time. But Joe kept saying that she could do it if she wanted to, and he wanted her to use her privileges. That was the rock she was battered against. So how has Janie and Jody's relationship developed? Jody has become more controlling in the time that they've been married. He says that Janie is too good to interact with trashy people, where essentially he doesn't want her to talk to the other townspeople, which makes for a pretty lonely life for Janie. And Janie doesn't enjoy working in the store or the post office, which are her main responsibilities and what fills most of her days. But Jody says that Janie is privileged to do so, and essentially kind of guilts her into it and makes her feel as though she has to. So let's continue reading. This business of the head rag irked her endlessly, but Jody was set on it. Her hair was not going to show in the store. It didn't seem sensible at all. That was because Joe never told Janie how jealous he was. He never told her how often he had seen the other men figuratively wallowing in it as she went about things in the store. And one night he had caught Walter standing behind Janie and brushing the back of his hand back and forth across the loose end of her braid, ever so lightly, so as to enjoy the feel of it without Janie knowing what he was doing. Joe was at the back of the store, and Walter didn't see him. He felt like rushing forth with a meat knife and chopping off the offending hand. That night he ordered Janie to tie up her hair around the store. That was all. She was there in the store for him to look at, not those others. But he never said things like that. It just wasn't in him. Take the matter of the yellow mule, for instance. So before we talk about the yellow mule, let's talk about how Jody's made Janie tie up her hair. So this comes out of jealousy. So Jody sees the other men in the town looking at Janie's hair, fantasizing about her hair, even sometimes touching it. And this causes him to feel jealous and possessive over Janie, where he doesn't want anyone else to look at her hair other than him. And we've been talking a bit about how Janie's hair symbolizes her identity. And so when he makes Janie tie up her hair in the hair rag, it indicates or symbolizes Janie's identity being covered up and hidden, which we see happening in the story, where Janie isn't allowed to talk to other people, and Janie isn't allowed to go and do what she wants. She's being controlled, and her identity is being controlled. And this is symbolized by the head rag. However, it's important to keep in mind that Jody isn't evil, he's just flawed. He loves Janie, it's just he loves Janie in his own way. He sees the world as a hierarchy in which he, because he's a rich man, is at the top. And he feels as though the townspeople are below him, and even Janie's below him. And he has to maintain this hierarchy so that the town can thrive. Now, we might disagree with Jody. We might agree with Jody. But these are the things that he feels and the reason why he treats Janie like he does. And so you might be frustrated with him. But remember, he's not evil. He's just flawed. And all of the characters in this book are flawed. We don't really have a real antagonist. All of these are characters who are doing the best that they can in the lives that they have. And while Jody's making some very serious mistakes, he also does some things that are really kind for people. And so he has both good parts of his personality and bad parts of his personality. And we're going to see that in the upcoming part, the next video after this one. You're going to see Jody do something good for the town. So I'll see you in the next video. I'm going to stop here and we'll pick up in part 2.